time. When subjected to sound the way that Oster described it, this standing wave happened in the brain, and the whole brain just went into one rhythm. Now, one of the things they found out as they began to study this, and actually they began to identify these brainwave patterns in the early 1900s. And the first one that they identified was the alpha brainwave pattern, which is if you know the Greek alphabet, the brainwave patterns from fastest to slowest go beta, alpha, theta, and delta, which is not in order, but they're named in the order that they discovered them. So, just to make it simpler, I'm going to do them in the order from fastest to slowest, and I know that a lot of this is a review for people if you've read the stuff that I've sent you carefully, but I find that as I explain this again, a lot of and people can ask me questions about it, so on, a lot of light bulbs go on for people, and they finally go, oh, okay, now I really get it. So that's part of the reason why I go over it again. The fastest brainwave pattern is a beta brainwave pattern, and that is a brainwave pattern above about 18 cycles per second. When you're in a beta brainwave pattern, that's kind of the daily rock and roll. You're just sort of your daily walking around space that you're in. It's actually 12 cycles per second and up. I'm sorry. When something happens to relax you, something happens to synchronize your brain, such as you close your eyes. If you close your eyes, you'll begin almost immediately to make alpha waves in the brain, just by closing your eyes. And alpha waves are from 8 to 12 cycles per second. Whereas beta is the brainwave pattern of analytical thinking and most of our conscious day-to-day activities, alpha is one of it's a little more introspective. It's one where you become relaxed. Certain neurochemicals are produced by the brain that begin to relax you. And at the slower ends of alpha, people begin to nod off. When you're falling asleep at night, and you're in that place where you're still aware, but you're really not totally awake, you're in a deep alpha brainwave pattern. And so that it's a spectrum going from being fairly alert in alpha, which is the brainwave pattern in which we learn the fastest. It's the brainwave pattern of what they call super learning, down to a deeper alpha where you begin to be not quite fully conscious. And in fact, when they measure the brainwave patterns of meditators, almost all of them are in a mid to deep alpha as they're meditating, as they're sitting there watching their breath or repeating a mantra or whatever. Now, I forgot to mention when I was talking about beta that if you're extremely beta, if you're in high beta, you begin to feel uneasy. You begin to feel fearful or anxious, dis-ease, disharmony. There's a direct correlation between the faster the brainwave pattern and the more you feel this sense of disconnectedness, of this polarization of opposites, of this feeling of separation, the feeling of being in opposition somehow to the world, that it's the world is even a dangerous and inhospitable place. And then as you slow down into the lower part of beta, you begin to feel better. And then as you go into alpha, you feel even more relaxed. And as you get into deep alpha and begin to go into a more meditative state, you begin to feel better still. If the brain waves continue to slow, then you start going into a theta brainwave pattern, which most people know of as a brainwave pattern of dreaming sleep. It's what scientists call a hypnagogic state, where all kinds of images and things come from the unconscious mind, and you become aware of them. And you can be alert and be in theta, which is a very deep meditative state, or you can be asleep and in a dreaming sleep state. The rapid eye movement, the REM state that you hear people talk about, is a theta brainwave state. When someone is meditating and they're in a theta state, they probably have a little bit of low beta or high alpha also happening at the same time, which is kind of what keeps you alert and keeps you from being really asleep. And if you lose that, those times that you kind of drift off while you're listening to the tapes or CDs, whatever you have, it's because you've lost that little bit of beta or high alpha, and that's when you just kind of drift off. If you go even deeper than theta, then you go into a delta brainwave pattern, which is dreamless sleep. And you can see that this spectrum of high beta, which is the most feelings of separation, down to low delta, which is the greatest feelings of unity and oneness. You experience that all the time. When you drift off into sleep, then you are really at one with everything. There's no feelings of separation at that point. It is possible to be in that delta state, just as it is with theta, and be alert, as long as there's a little bit of alpha or beta that's overlaid on it. The reason, in fact, that we have the crystal bowls and the rain and that sort of stuff is to add a little bit of a signal that allows you to maintain a little bit of alertness, so that you don't just totally go into theta or totally go into delta. Sometimes it causes coughing, though. Somebody get this woman a cough drop. Oh. Everyone pass your cough drops to Bev. Okay, let me see here. So anyway, these are the 4 brainwave patterns. And some people think that the goal of meditation is to get into these brainwave patterns. And in fact, when this was first discovered and really became popular back in the 1970s with Silva mind control and the stuff with Maharishi and a number of different offshoots, the first thing that happened was that everybody was saying, oh, the golden elixir, the touchstone, the lodestone is alpha. If we can just get ourselves into alpha, everything is going to be great. So get into your sensory deprivation tank, or learn how to do your Silva mind control, or whatever it is, because if you can do alpha, then that's it. That's where nirvana is going to come from, and everything's going to be beautiful if you can get into alpha. And then as the way these things often happen, that fad ran its course, and then everybody was saying, no, it's theta. Theta is so cool, because you're going to have these dreamlike images and all this stuff is going to happen, and it's really cool, and you're just going to float away. And so for a while then theta was the thing. And thankfully for Centerpoint, delta never really caught on that much. And delta is actually where the real good stuff actually happens. It's just that most people are gone while it's happening, because it zones you out so much. But what's really going on is not that you're in alpha and therefore you're in this certain state, or you're in theta and you're experiencing that state, or you're in delta and experiencing that state. That does happen. There are states that are associated with each of these brainwave patterns. There are certain mental abilities that are associated with each of these. Creativity, for instance, is associated with theta, for instance. And also integration, emotional integration, is associated with theta. There have been a number of studies done that show that when people are in therapy and then they use some technique or device to get into a theta brainwave pattern, that whatever emotional integrative work that they're trying to do, it kind of all comes together then. Also, learning that was done in alpha, then when people go into a theta state after a learning session, it tends to somehow, solidify that learning. So there's a lot of things that happen in these brainwave patterns. But what I believe is actually happening is way beyond any of those things. And by the way, when people meditate in a traditional way, the same thing is happening. They are also using a technology, if you want to call it that, to get into these same states. It's just that the technology is relying on you to focus on something in order to make it happen. Whereas when you use something like Holosync, you don't have to focus.